The great celebration hall on Nexus Prime sparkled with lights from 1,000 worlds. Representatives from 12 different species filled the massive space, their voices mixing in a symphony of languages that had learned to speak as one. Tonight marked 300 years since the Galactic Concordat brought peace to the stars. Ambassador Li Dongwu straightened his formal robes as he watched the crowd. As Earth's chief representative, he had spent 20 years helping different species solve their problems without war. His calm voice had stopped 3 major conflicts in the past decade alone. Other diplomats called him the peacemaker, though Li never thought of himself that way. He simply believed that talking was better than fighting. "The Vorthak delegation looks unhappy," whispered his aide, pointing toward a group of tall, scaled beings standing apart from the celebration. Li nodded. The reptilian Vorthak had always been the most difficult species in the Concordat. Their empire valued strength above all else, and they struggled with humanity's role as mediators. Still, they had honored the peace treaty for 3 centuries. That had to mean something. Across the galaxy, Captain Kim Taeho stood on the bridge of his ship, the Harmony's Edge. His vessel patrolled the neutral zone between Vorthak and Kalari space, keeping watch for any signs of trouble. The ship carried a mixed crew of humans and aliens, all working together to maintain peace. "Captain, we're receiving the anniversary broadcast from Nexus Prime," reported his first officer, Choi Min-seo. She was young for her rank but had earned her position through skill and dedication. "Put it on screen," Kim ordered. The main display showed the celebration, with thousands of beings celebrating together. It made him proud to be human. His species had found their place in the galaxy not through conquest but through understanding. On the distant colony world of New Sol, Dr. Park Ji-hai finished her research for the day. Her laboratory buzzed with activity as scientists from different species worked side by side. Today, her team had made a breakthrough in treating a disease that affected 3 different alien races. The cure would be shared freely with all Concordat members, as was the human way. "Dr. Park, the celebration is starting soon," called out Vex, her Kalari research partner. The insect-like being had become one of her closest friends over the past 5 years. Together, they had saved countless lives across the galaxy. "I'll watch it with everyone in the common room," Ji-hai replied, saving her work. New Sol was one of humanity's most successful colonies, home to over 50 million people and countless alien visitors. It represented everything good about the Concordat, different species living and working together in harmony. Back on Nexus Prime, the celebration reached its peak as Earth's Prime Minister Yoon Hae-jin took the stage. The crowd fell silent as she began to speak. 300 years ago, our species met for the first time," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the hall. "We could have chosen the path of war, as so many had before us. Instead, we chose something harder. We chose to understand each other." The audience applauded, but Li noticed that several alien delegations remained quiet. The Vorthak ambassador's red eyes gleamed with something that looked like anger. Beside them, representatives from the Morvac Collective and the Zirian Union showed similar expressions. "Humanity has always believed that strength comes not from the power to destroy, but from the wisdom to build," the Prime Minister continued. "We have served as mediators not because we think ourselves superior, but because we understand that every voice deserves to be heard." In the neutral zone, Captain Kim received an encrypted message on his personal communicator. The sender was Admiral Song Kyung-min, head of Human Space Command. The message was brief, but troubling. "Be ready for anything. Strange fleet movements detected in several systems." Kim frowned. Fleet movements during the anniversary celebration seemed odd. Most military ships should be participating in ceremonial displays, not moving through space. He quietly ordered his crew to increase sensor sweeps of the surrounding area. Dr. Park watched the ceremony from New Sol's community center, surrounded by friends from a dozen different worlds. The diverse crowd reflected everything she loved about human colonies. They welcomed everyone. Children of different species played together while their parents watched the broadcast. "Your Prime Minister speaks well," commented Thrix, a Luminari diplomat visiting the colony. The ethereal being's translucent skin glowed softly in the dim light. "Though I wonder if all species truly embrace these ideals of cooperation." Something in Thrix's tone made Jihai look at him more carefully. The Luminari were known for their wisdom and foresight. If Thrix was concerned about something, it might be worth listening to. The celebration on Nexus Prime continued late into the night. Species that had once been enemies shared drinks and stories. Human children played games with young aliens who looked nothing like them, but laughed at the same jokes. It seemed like proof that the Concordat had succeeded beyond anyone's wildest dreams. But in the shadows between the celebration lights, secret meetings were taking place. Vorthak generals spoke in whispers with Kellery hive leaders and Morvac war chiefs. They had spent months planning, waiting for this moment when human attention was focused on ceremony rather than security. The Dominion Pact, as they called themselves, had grown tired of human influence in galactic affairs. 4 major species had quietly agreed that humanity's soft approach to diplomacy was holding back the natural order of the universe. The strong should rule the weak, they believed, not coddle them with endless negotiations. As the anniversary celebration finally wound down, Li Dongwu felt a sense of satisfaction. Another successful diplomatic gathering, another step toward lasting peace. He had no way of knowing that across the galaxy, attack fleets were already moving toward their targets. Captain Kim's sensors detected nothing unusual in his patrol area. Dr. Park fell asleep in her apartment, dreaming of tomorrow's research. Prime Minister Yoon returned to her quarters, pleased with how well the celebration had gone. None of them realized that everything they had worked to build was about to be torn apart. In the depths of space, Vorthak dreadnoughts dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edges of human systems. Kelari swarm ships surrounded peaceful colonies while their inhabitants slept. The Dominion Pact had chosen the perfect moment to strike, when humanity was scattered across the galaxy, focused on celebration rather than defense. The last 300 years of peace were about to end in a single, coordinated act of betrayal that would change the galaxy forever. The first explosions lit up New Sol's sky like deadly fireworks. Dr. Park Ji-hai was drinking morning coffee when the orbital defense platforms began dying one by one, each death marked by brilliant flashes of light. She had barely enough time to understand what was happening before the real bombardment began. Kalari warships descended from the darkness like metal insects, their weapons turning the peaceful colony into a hellscape of fire and destruction. Buildings that had taken decades to build crumbled in seconds. The research facility where Ji-hai had worked for 10 years vanished in a ball of plasma fire, along with her colleagues from 6 different species. "Everyone to the emergency shelters," she shouted, helping an injured Morvac scientist toward the nearest bunker. But the shelters had been built for accidents and natural disasters, not military attacks. The Kalari had studied human colony designs for years through peaceful exchanges. They knew exactly where to strike. Ji-hai's communicator buzzed with desperate messages from friends and family across the galaxy. Similar attacks were happening everywhere at once. Haven's Rest, New Kyoto, Terra Nova, every major human colony was under assault. The scope of the betrayal was beyond anything she could have imagined. Captain Kim Tae-ho received the first distress call while his ship was conducting routine patrols. The message came from Haven's Rest, a peaceful agricultural world home to 12 million people. "This is Haven's Rest colony to any human ships in range," the panicked voice crackled through static. "We are under attack by Vorthak forces. Repeat, we are under attack. They're bombing the cities. Please, if anyone can hear this." The message cut off in a burst of interference. Kim's blood turned cold as more calls flooded in from across human space. 17 colonies reporting attacks, 18, 20. The numbers kept climbing. "All alien crew members report to the briefing room immediately," Kim ordered. His ship carried a mixed crew of 37 beings from 8 different species. They had served together for years, sharing dangers and victories. Now he needed to know where their loyalties lay. The alien crew members filed in with confused expressions. Vex, his Kalari communications officer, looked particularly distressed. "Captain, what's happening? The reports we're receiving don't make sense." "Your people are attacking human colonies," Kim said quietly, "along with the Vorthak, Morvac, and Zerion. I need to know. Are you with us or against us? The room fell silent. Slowly, one by one, the alien crew members received urgent messages on their personal communicators, orders to return to their home fleets immediately, orders that meant abandoning their human colleagues at the moment of greatest need. Vex was the last to check his message. When he looked up, his compound eyes were filled with something that might have been tears. I'm sorry, Captain. My Hive Queen commands my return. I have no choice. Within 2 hours, Kim found himself commanding a ship crewed entirely by humans. The aliens who had been his friends, his trusted officers, his family, all were gone. The mixed crew that had symbolized everything good about the Concordat no longer existed. On Earth, Prime Minister Yoon Hae-jin stood in the emergency command center, watching the galaxy burn on dozens of screens. Reports flooded in from every human world under attack. The coordination was perfect, the timing precise. Years of planning had gone into this moment. Madam Prime Minister, her military advisor approached with a grim expression. We've lost contact with 31 colonies. The attack fleets knew exactly where our defenses were weakest, exactly when our patrol ships would be out of position. How many people? She asked, though she dreaded the answer. Early estimates suggest 8 billion humans are in immediate danger, another 2 billion in systems that haven't been attacked yet but are likely targets. 8 billion. The number was so vast that Yoon's mind struggled to process it. Every one of those people had trusted their government to protect them. They had believed in the peaceful future that humanity had spent 3 centuries building. Ambassador Lee Dong-woo barely escaped Nexus Prime with his life. Vorthak assassins had come for him in the night, but years of diplomatic work in dangerous places had taught him to sleep lightly. He managed to reach an emergency shuttle just as explosions rocked the diplomatic quarter. Now he hid in the lower levels of the station, using maintenance tunnels that the attackers hadn't thought to guard. His diplomatic immunity meant nothing when the entire Concordat structure was collapsing around him. The aliens he had considered friends for decades were now hunting him like an animal. He managed to reach a communications array and sent one final message to Earth before Vorthak soldiers discovered his location. This is Lee Dong-woo to all human forces. The Concordat is dead. They planned this betrayal for years, maybe decades. They used our trust against us, our kindness as a weapon. But they've made one critical mistake. They think our desire for peace makes us weak. They're about to learn the difference between choosing not to fight and being unable to fight. The message would become famous in the days to come, but Lee never knew that. Vorthak plasma rifles ended his long diplomatic career in a burst of superheated energy. Dr. Park Ji-hai found herself among the last survivors on New Seoul. The Kalari had been thorough in their destruction, but some humans had managed to reach deep underground shelters. As the senior scientist present, she became their unofficial leader. We need to get off-world, she told the 43 survivors huddled in the emergency bunker. The orbital bombardment will continue until there's nothing left. A maintenance worker named Han spoke up. There's an old cargo ship in the industrial district. If it wasn't destroyed, we might be able to reach it. That's 3 kilometers through an active war zone, protested another survivor. Ji-hai looked around at the frightened faces. These were teachers, farmers, shopkeepers, and scientists, not soldiers. But they were also human beings who refused to give up. We move at night. Small groups. If we're going to die, we die trying to live. The journey across the burning colony took 6 hours. Buildings collapsed around them as Kalari fighters continued their systematic destruction. 12 survivors didn't make it to the ship. But the rest did, along with something precious, the complete research database from Ji-hai's laboratory, containing biological data on every Concordat species. As their stolen ship limped toward the edge of the system, Ji-hai watched New Seoul die behind them. 5 million people had called that world home. Now it was nothing but ash and radioactive dust. The Kalari had been her friends, her research partners, her colleagues for years. They had shared meals, celebrated discoveries, worked side by side to better the galaxy. Now she understood the truth. While humans had been building bridges, their allies had been preparing for war. Every cultural exchange, every scientific collaboration, every act of trust had been turned into intelligence for this moment of betrayal. Captain Kim arrived at Haven's Rest 12 hours too late. The agricultural world was gone, its green fields turned to glass by sustained orbital bombardment. 12 million people reduced to atomic shadows. The rescue fleet he had hoped to find was debris scattered across 3 solar systems. "Captain," Choi Min-seo reported from the sensor station, "I'm detecting similar destruction patterns across 17 human systems." This wasn't random. They coordinated strikes to cause maximum casualties while our forces were spread out for the anniversary celebrations. Kim stared at the dead world below. His sister lived on Haven's Rest with her family. His nephew was supposed to start school next month. Now they were all gone, along with everything else that had made this place a home. The neutral species, led by the ethereal Luminari, finally responded to the crisis with official statements of regret and calls for peace. They would not take sides, they announced. This was an internal matter for the former Concordat members to resolve among themselves. It was the final betrayal. The species that humanity had protected and mediated for were abandoning them in their darkest hour. The galaxy watched as human civilization burned and chose to do nothing. But in hidden bases throughout human space, something else was stirring. Military leaders who had spent 3 centuries maintaining peace were remembering older lessons. Scientists who had shared their discoveries freely were calculating different kinds of equations. The sleeping giant was beginning to wake up, and its dreams were filled with fire. 1 year after the Great Betrayal, the galaxy had settled into its new order. The Dominion Pact controlled most of the former Concordat space, their fleets patrolling systems that had once known only peace. The Vorthak Empire claimed the richest mining worlds, while Kalari hives spread across former human colonies like a disease. To the galaxy's observers, humanity appeared broken. Scattered refugees crowded into the few remaining independent worlds, begging for sanctuary that rarely came. The neutral species shook their heads sadly and spoke of the tragic fall of Earth's children. Some even suggested it was natural selection. The weak had been replaced by the strong. They were all wrong. Deep in the shadow of Jupiter's moons, Admiral Song Kyung-min stood before the largest gathering of human military officers in 3 centuries. The secret base had been built during the early days of space exploration, when humanity still remembered what it meant to prepare for war. For 300 years, it had sat empty, a relic of more violent times. Now it hummed with activity, as the remnants of Human Space Command planned their response. "Gentlemen, ladies," Song began, her voice carrying the weight of authority earned through decades of service. "For 1 year, we have let them believe they won. We pulled back, we scattered, we appeared broken. They think we're hiding in holes, licking our wounds like beaten animals." The assembled officers, survivors from across human space, listened in absolute silence. These were not the ceremonial commanders who had led parade formations during the peace years. These were the few who had studied military history as more than an academic exercise, who had kept the old knowledge alive even when it seemed obsolete. "They were right about one thing," Song continued. "The humans they knew are gone. The diplomats, the mediators, the peacekeepers, that version of humanity died with our colonies. What they've awakened is something much older, much more dangerous." In her laboratory beneath Titan's ice, Dr. Bae Soo-jin made final adjustments to weapons that had been considered too terrible for a civilized galaxy. The Prometheus project had been started during humanity's first encounters with hostile aliens, then abandoned when the Concordat brought peace. 3 centuries of research, shelved and forgotten, now represented humanity's salvation. "The gravitational disruptors are ready for deployment," she reported to Admiral Song via encrypted communication. "The molecular dissolver warheads have passed all tests, and the neural disruption fields." She paused, still disturbed by her own creation's effectiveness. "They work exactly as designed. These were weapons that the peaceful Concordat had never imagined. Humanity had shared their defensive technologies freely, but the truly dangerous research had remained hidden. While other species had focused on bigger guns and stronger shields, human scientists had explored the fundamental forces that held matter together. They had learned to turn physics itself into a weapon. Dr. Park Ji-hai worked in a different kind of laboratory, one focused on biological warfare rather than exotic physics. The research data she had saved from New Seoul contained detailed medical information about every concordate species, information gathered during years of cooperative medical research, data that had been freely shared by aliens who trusted human doctors with their species' most intimate biological secrets. The Kalari respiratory weakness is confirmed, she reported to her small team of survivors. Exposure to specific airborne compounds will cause complete hive collapse within hours. The Vorthak regeneration factor can be reversed with targeted genetic viruses. The Morvac neural clusters are vulnerable to electromagnetic disruption at precise frequencies. It felt like sacrilege, turning medical knowledge into instruments of death. But Ji-hai remembered the children burning on New Seoul, remembered her alien colleagues who had vanished the moment their species declared war. Trust was a luxury humanity could no longer afford. Captain Kim Tae-ho no longer commanded the Harmony's Edge. That ship, with its mixed crew and peaceful mission, belonged to a dead era. Now he stood on the bridge of the Retribution, humanity's first true warship in 3 centuries. It looked nothing like the exploration vessels and cargo ships that had carried humans to the stars. This was a predator, built for a single purpose. All weapon systems show green, Captain, reported his new weapons officer. The entire crew was human now, recruited from survivors who had lost everything in the Dominion attacks. They had nothing left to lose, which made them the most dangerous people in the galaxy. Target acquired, announced the sensor operator. Dominion supply depot, lightly defended, just like intelligence promised. Kim nodded grimly. The time for hiding was over. Today, humanity would remind the galaxy what they were capable of when truly threatened. All ships, this is Retribution. Execute attack pattern Alpha. Show them what we learned from 3 centuries of studying their weaknesses. The battle was over in 17 minutes. The Dominion had expected desperate refugees in converted cargo ships if they expected anything at all. Instead, they faced weapons that rendered their shields useless, tactics that turned their own formations against them, and an enemy that gave no quarter. When the last Vorthak ship exploded, Kim opened a communication channel that broadcast across the entire sector. This is Captain Kim Tae-ho of the Human Resistance. For 1 year you thought us broken. You were wrong. This is just the beginning. We know your weaknesses, we know your fears, and we know exactly how to exploit both. Tell your commanders, the humans are coming. The message reached Earth within hours, where the scattered refugee communities heard it with a mixture of hope and terror. Prime Minister Yoon Hae-jin, now leading a government in exile from a hidden base on Europa, addressed the human survivors across the galaxy. My fellow humans, she said, her voice carrying across secret channels to every surviving colony and refugee camp. For 300 years, we chose to be gardeners instead of warriors, builders instead of destroyers. We were proud of that choice, and right to be proud. But our enemies mistook our mercy for weakness, our patience for fear. She paused, looking directly into the camera with eyes that had aged decades in a single year. They have killed our children, burned our worlds, and scattered us to the winds. They think this makes them strong. They think this makes them our masters. They are about to learn the difference between a species that has never known war and a species that chooses when to wage it. Across the galaxy, other human cells began to stir. Scientists who had spent their careers healing began developing plagues. Engineers who had built peaceful colonies started constructing weapons that defied physics. Diplomats who had prevented wars for decades began planning the most efficient ways to destroy entire civilizations. The Luminari, with their supposed wisdom and foresight, finally began to understand what they had helped unleash. Their ambassador to the Dominion Pact sent urgent warnings to Vorthak High Command. You have made a terrible mistake. We have studied humanity for centuries, and you only saw what they chose to show you. Beneath their peaceful nature lies something that survived the crucible of their homeworld, something that conquered ice ages and meteor impacts, that climbed from caves to the stars through sheer determination. You have awakened that something. But the warnings came too late. Admiral Song had spent the year identifying every Dominion military facility, every supply route, every weakness in their hastily expanded empire. The attacks on human colonies had been perfectly coordinated. Humanity's response would be even more precise. Dr. Bae Soo-jin uploaded the final weapon specifications to manufacturing facilities hidden throughout the solar system. Weapons that would make the Dominion's military might look like stone axes. All Prometheus systems are online and ready for deployment, she reported. Recommend immediate implementation of Operation Nemesis. The sleeping giant had fully awakened, and it was furious. For 3 centuries, humanity had chosen to be sheep among wolves, protecting the weak and mediating between the strong. The wolves had mistaken their restraint for inability, their mercy for weakness. Now they would learn what happened when you killed a shepherd's flock. The sheep were gone, burned away in the fires of betrayal. What remained was something far more dangerous, a species that had spent 300 years learning every secret of their enemies, while carefully hiding their own true nature. The galaxy was about to remember why Earth's children had survived every catastrophe their homeworld could throw at them. They had not conquered the stars through peace and diplomacy alone. They had earned their place in the universe the hard way, and they were prepared to defend it the same way. The real war was about to begin. The Vorthak High Command received the first reports with dismissive arrogance. A few human terrorists had destroyed a supply depot, nothing more than desperate survivors making noise before their inevitable extinction. General Krath, the reptilian commander who had planned the original attacks on human colonies, barely glanced at the casualty reports. Deploy the Third Fleet to hunt down these criminals, he ordered with a wave of his clawed hand. Use overwhelming force. Make examples of any humans you capture. 3 days later, the Third Fleet was space debris scattered across 2 star systems. The human ships had appeared without warning, struck with impossible precision, and vanished before reinforcements could respond. Worse yet, they had broadcast the entire battle across Dominion communication networks, ensuring every species in the Pact witnessed their humiliation. Admiral Song Kyung-min studied the tactical reports from her command ship, the Prometheus. The vessel was a marvel of human engineering that the Dominion had never suspected existed. 3 centuries of theoretical research turned into reality. Its hull was made from materials that bent space-time around them, making targeting nearly impossible. Its weapons could tear apart the fundamental forces holding matter together. Target analysis complete, reported her tactical officer. The Vorthak homeworld defense grid follows standard Dominion patterns. 12 orbital platforms, 47 defensive satellites, approximately 300 patrol ships. Song nodded. The Vorthak had always relied on brute force and superior numbers. They had studied human defensive strategies for centuries through peaceful exchanges, but humans had never shown them their offensive capabilities. Signal the fleet. We move to Phase 2. The largest human military force in 300 years emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Vorthak system. 57 ships that looked nothing like the peaceful exploration vessels the galaxy remembered. These were predators, built by a species that had finally stopped pretending to be prey. General Krath watched the sensor displays with growing alarm. The human fleet was smaller than his forces, but they moved with a precision that spoke of superior technology and training. All ships, attack formation. Show these mammals what happens when they threaten the mighty Vorthak Empire. The Battle of Vorth Prime lasted exactly 43 minutes. It became the most studied military engagement in galactic history, required viewing at every war college for the next 1,000 years. Military analysts would spend decades trying to understand how humanity achieved such complete tactical superiority. Captain Kim Tae-ho led the first attack wave, his ship the Retribution cutting through Vorthak defenses like they were made of paper. The weapons Dr. Bae Soo-jin had developed ignored conventional shields entirely, striking directly at the molecular bonds that held enemy ships together. Vorthak dreadnoughts simply fell apart. their crews dying before they understood what had killed them. Enemy flagship is attempting to flee, reported Kim's tactical officer. General Krath's personal command ship is breaking orbit. Negative, Kim replied coldly. No survivors, no prisoners, no mercy. They showed none to the children on Haven's Rest, they get none from us. The Retribution's main cannon fired once. General Krath's ship ceased to exist, along with the commander who had ordered the death of 12 million humans. Kim felt no satisfaction in the kill, only the grim completion of a necessary task. While Admiral Song's fleet devastated the Vorthak homeworld, Dr. Park Ji-hai led a very different kind of attack against the Kalari hives. Her team infiltrated the insectoid species' core worlds using knowledge gained from years of medical cooperation. They knew Kalari biology better than the Kalari themselves. The biological weapon she deployed was elegant in its simplicity. A modified virus that appeared harmless to individual Kalari, but proved fatal to their hive mind connections. Within hours of exposure, entire hive complexes simply stopped functioning. The Kalari Queen Mother who had ordered the massacre on Wei Soul died slowly alone, cut off from the collective consciousness that gave her existence meaning. Target neutralized, Ji-hai reported to Admiral Song. Kalari military capacity reduced by 78%. Remaining hives are requesting immediate surrender. It should have felt like victory. Instead, Ji-hai stared at the readings showing billions of dead Kalari and felt only emptiness. She had become everything she once opposed, a killer who used medicine as a weapon. But the faces of her murdered colleagues haunted her dreams, and she found she could live with what she had become. The Morvac Collective and Zerion Union surrendered without fighting after witnessing the fate of their Dominion allies. Their ambassadors arrived at human-controlled space carrying white flags and desperate pleas for mercy. They claimed they had been coerced into joining the Pact, that they never wanted war with humanity. The new Secretary General Lee Min-ho, brother of the murdered ambassador Lee Dongwu, received their surrender at Nexus Prime. The space station had been recaptured by human forces and converted into a military command center. The grand halls where diplomacy once flourished now housed tribunals for war criminals. Your people participated in the murder of 8 billion humans, Lee Min-ho said quietly as he reviewed the surrender documents. You used our trust against us, turned our gifts of friendship into intelligence for war. You expect mercy because you were coerced? Our children received no mercy because they were innocent. The alien ambassadors trembled before him. This was not the diplomatic human they remembered. Lee Min-ho wore the uniform of the human military government, and his eyes held the cold fury of a species betrayed. Behind him stood guards carrying weapons that could kill in ways the aliens couldn't comprehend. However, Lee Min-ho continued, we are not like you. Surrender unconditionally, submit to human oversight of your military forces, and pay reparations for the damages you caused. Do this, and your species will survive. Refuse, and join the Vorthak and Kalari in extinction. The neutral species finally realized the scope of their mistake. The Luminary ambassador requested an urgent meeting with human leadership, hoping to mediate before humanity's wrath consumed the entire galaxy. Prime Minister Yoon Hae-jin received the Luminary delegation. In her new capital on Europa, the ethereal beings that had once seemed so wise and enlightened now appeared fragile and frightened. They had watched humanity burn for a year, offering nothing but empty words of regret. Now they came begging for the chance to make things right. You speak of mediation, Yoon said, her voice carrying the weight of a species that had lost everything and rebuilt itself in fire. You offered to mediate when our children were dying. Where was this concern when the Dominion was glassing our worlds? The lead Luminary diplomat, a being called Crystal Song at dawn, flickered with distressed patterns of light. We believed non-interference was the path of wisdom. We thought... You thought nothing, Yoon interrupted. You watched genocide and called it neutrality. You let evil triumph because taking sides required courage you didn't possess. Now you want to make peace? There already is peace, human peace, the kind that comes through strength, not wishful thinking. Across the galaxy, The surviving Dominion species began to understand their new reality. Human fleets patrolled their systems, human administrators oversaw their governments, and human tribunals decided the fate of their war criminals. The species, that had once ruled through fear, now lived in constant terror of their former victims. Dr. Bei Su-jin established Prometheus research stations in every major system, facilities that pushed the boundaries of physics in ways that made other species deeply uncomfortable. The technology they developed was shared with no one. Humanity had learned the cost of trust. Advanced weapons, defensive systems, and surveillance networks ensured that no alien species would ever again pose a threat to human survival. Captain Kim, now promoted to admiral, patrolled the outer rim with a fleet of dreadnoughts. His ships detected the probe from an unknown species beyond the galactic edge, newcomers who had yet to learn about the galaxy's new order. Prepare a standard first contact protocol, Kim ordered, but maintain full combat readiness. We're not the same species that welcomed strangers with open arms. The probe broadcast friendly greetings in mathematical languages, the universal symbols of peaceful contact. It reminded Kim of humanity's first encounters with alien life, filled with hope and wonder at the possibilities of interstellar friendship. Those days were gone forever. The innocent species that had reached for the stars with dreams of cooperation had died in the flames of betrayal. What remained was something harder, colder, and infinitely more dangerous. Signal the probe, Kim commanded. Welcome to our galaxy. We are humanity and we are in charge here now. Follow our rules, respect our authority, and you'll find us fair but firm. Cross us. He paused, thinking of burned worlds and murdered children. Cross us and you'll learn why the galaxy fears our name. The message was broadcast not just to the alien probe, but throughout human-controlled space. It served as both warning and promise. Humanity would maintain peace, but it would be peace on their terms. The galaxy had chosen to test human patience once. The survivors would never make that mistake again. The storm had passed, leaving humanity transformed. The gentle. 5 years had passed since humanity's awakening, and the galaxy bore little resemblance to the peaceful concordat that had once existed. From her office atop the rebuilt Nexus Prime, Secretary General Lee Min-ho looked out at a space station that hummed with human authority. The grand diplomatic halls had been converted to military command centers, and the mixed species workforce had been replaced by humans and carefully vetted alien auxiliaries. Admiral Song Kyung-min stood before a massive holographic display showing the current state of galactic civilization. Red zones marked former Dominion territory under direct human military occupation. Yellow zones indicated species under human oversight but allowed limited self-governance. The few green zones were reserved for worlds that had actively helped humanity during the dark years. The Vorthak homeworld remains under strict quarantine, Song reported to the assembled human leadership. The surviving population has been relocated to designated settlement zones. Their military capacity is permanently eliminated. The once mighty Vorthak Empire was a shadow of its former self. The proud reptilian warriors who had initiated humanity's genocide now lived as refugees on their own world, dependent on human charity for basic survival. Their weapons had been destroyed, their ships scrapped, their military traditions erased from history. It was a mercy they had not shown to human children. Dr. Park Ji-hai had accepted the position of Director of Galactic Biological Security, a role that would have been unthinkable during the Concordat era. Her department monitored every alien species for signs of biological warfare development, maintaining detailed genetic profiles that could be weaponized at a moment's notice. The trust that had once defined interspecies medical cooperation was gone forever. The quarterly biological surveys are complete, she reported from her secure facility on Titan. No unauthorized genetic modifications detected among monitored species. The Kalari population continues to decline as expected. Their hive mind structure never fully recovered from the neural disruption campaigns. It was a clinical way to describe the slow extinction of a species, but Ji-hai had learned to view her former research partners as data points rather than individuals. The alternative was madness, the weight of billions of deaths pressed down on her conscience every day. She had become a monster to defeat monsters, and the galaxy was safer for it. Captain Kim Tae-ho, now Admiral Kim, commanded the Outer Rim Defense Force from his flagship Retribution. His patrol routes took him to the edges of known space, where humanity's expanding influence met the unknown. Today brought a familiar scenario, another alien probe from beyond the galactic edge, carrying the hopeful signals of a species making first contact. "Standard protocols, Admiral?" asked his communications officer. Kim nodded grimly. "Broadcast the warning. Make sure they understand the rules before they get any closer." The message went out in mathematical languages and universal symbols, the same peaceful approach humanity had once used. But the content was very different from those innocent first contact attempts of centuries past. "This is Admiral Kim Tae-ho of the human hegemony. You are approaching territory under human protection. We welcome peaceful contact, but be advised. This galaxy operates under human law. Any act of aggression, any attempt at deception, any violation of our sovereignty will be met with immediate and overwhelming retaliation. We have learned from experience that the universe is not a kind place. We suggest you learn from our experience, rather than creating your own." The alien probe responded with confused queries about the galactic concordate, references to old star charts that showed a very different political landscape. Kim almost smiled at the innocence. These newcomers expected to find the galaxy of 3 centuries past, filled with diverse species working together in harmony. "The concordate is dead," Kim replied bluntly. "It died when several member species decided to commit genocide against humans. What you'll find here now is order imposed by strength, peace maintained through superior firepower, and justice delivered by those with the power to enforce it. If you can accept that reality, you're welcome to join us. If not, I suggest you turn around and find somewhere else to build your civilization." Back on Earth, Prime Minister Yoon Hae-jin addressed the rebuilt Global Assembly. The planet that had once been humanity's peaceful center now served as the military and administrative heart of a galactic empire. The old dreams of exploration and cooperation had been replaced by the hard realities of survival and dominance. "The Prometheus defense grid is now fully operational," she announced to representatives from every human world. "Any hostile fleet approaching our space will be detected and eliminated before it enters our territory. The early warning systems extend 300 light-years in every direction." Dr. Bae Soo-jin had spent the past 5 years building weapons that pushed the boundaries of physics. Her Prometheus stations were scattered throughout human space, each one capable of destroying entire fleets with technologies that other species couldn't even comprehend. The research she had once considered too dangerous for a civilized galaxy had become humanity's insurance policy against future betrayal. "Gravitational mines are in position around all major systems," she reported from her primary research facility. "Any unauthorized faster-than-light travel will trigger automatic responses. The neural disruption fields can be activated remotely if needed, and the molecular dissolver platforms—" She paused, still awed by her own creation's destructive potential. "They can sterilize entire worlds in minutes if necessary." It was overkill by any rational measure, but humanity had learned that rational measures were inadequate when facing extinction. The species that had nearly been wiped out by trusting in goodness now survived by preparing for the worst possible scenarios. The neutral species that had abandoned humanity during its darkest hour now lived in constant fear of human retribution. The Luminari, once considered the wisest beings in the galaxy, had been reduced to begging for continued existence. Their crystalline cities lay dark and empty, their populations scattered to refugee camps on distant moons. "Please," Crystal Song at Dawn pleaded during her monthly appearance before the human tribunal. "We were wrong to abandon you, but we meant no harm. Our entire philosophy was built on non-interference. We couldn't have known—" "You knew exactly what was happening," interrupted Judge Prosecutor Han Soli, one of the survivors from New Seoul. "You watched our children burn and called it neutrality. You let evil triumph because stopping it would have required courage. Now you want forgiveness? Earn it. Spend the next century proving that you've learned from your mistakes." The Luminari delegate flickered with patterns of despair. Her species had fallen from galactic leadership to supervised probation, their every action monitored by human observers. It was a fate kinder than extinction, but barely. In the deepest vaults of human space, memorial walls listed the names of the dead. 8 billion humans had died in the Dominion attacks, each name carved in stone that would last forever. Children who would never grow up, scientists whose discoveries would never be made, artists whose beauty would never be shared with the universe. Secretary General Lee Min-ho visited the memorial every year on the anniversary of the attacks. He stood before his brother's name, remembering the diplomat who had died believing in the power of words over weapons. Ambassador Lee Dong-woo had been wrong about many things, but his final message had been prophetic. The galaxy had mistaken human kindness for weakness. The new species from beyond the rim have agreed to our terms, Admiral Kim reported during the quarterly briefing. They call themselves the Xanathi. Their technology is primitive, their military insignificant. Standard oversight protocols have been implemented. Lee Min-ho nodded. Another species added to humanity's growing empire. Another civilization that would grow up knowing human authority as the natural order of things. The children of these newcomers would learn human history in their schools, understand why the galaxy operated under human law, accept that peace came through strength rather than hope. Any signs of resistance? He asked. None, Kim replied. They're actually grateful for our protection. Apparently, their homeworld was threatened by the same forces that the old Concordat failed to handle. They see us as liberators rather than conquerors. It was a common pattern. Species throughout the galaxy had benefited from human rule, protected from threats that the weak Concordat structure had been unable to address. Pirates, raiders, and aggressive civilizations that had once terrorized peaceful worlds now faced human justice. The galaxy was safer under human authority than it had ever been under the old system of endless negotiation and compromise. Dr. Park Ji-hai stood in her laboratory, looking at genetic samples from dozens of species. Each one represented potential, weapons, biological vulnerabilities that could be exploited if necessary. The knowledge that had once been used for healing now served as deterrent against future aggression. The galaxy thinks we're monsters, she said to her reflection in the observation window. Maybe they're right, but we're monsters who keep the peace, monsters who protect the innocent, monsters who ensure that genocide never happens again. Admiral, Song reviewed the latest intelligence reports from across human